So today we're going to be continuing to look at the alternative future of the world. Now this is part 3 to our alternative future series, and if you haven't seen the first 2 parts, make sure to go check them out because they are pretty good. I've actually been really enjoying making and watching this series so far. So if you do want to see more of it, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're mainly trying to keep this series alive and going because I have a tendency with past series to kind of fizzle out and die, and I really don't want this series to die because it's super fun to make and you guys love it. So once again, show support if you want to see the continuation. Subscribing also helps us get to our end goal of 100,000 subscribers. We're not aiming for that by the end of the year. We're just aiming for it in general. I really hope we can hit it by maybe February or March of next year. So yeah, let's go ahead and see where we left off. So in our last video, we had a war between Morocco and Algeria breaking out, with Morocco and its allies coming out on top. From here, Algeria and Libya were put under control of France, and then Libya under the control of the United States. And together, the United States, France, Morocco, and Tunisia all formed an alliance together. In Southern Africa, we have South Africa annexing Eswatini and Lesotho, while up north, we have the East African Federation creating an alliance. In the Middle East, we had a lot of interesting things take place, such as Turkey expanding down into Syria and starting a war with Iran, in which they won. And with that, we had the formation of another alliance between Iran, Iraq, and Yemen. And finally, over in the Pacific, we had one large war breakout between the PDO and China, in which the PDO kind of won. China really didn't lose anything, but their economy was left in shambles. And then North Korea was annexed by South Korea. Oh, and then also this island was annexed by the US. So overall, last video was fairly eventful and a lot of cool events took place. But now we're going to be seeing tensions climbing in the world. So now let's go ahead and take a look at China, where we have a major event taking place that will definitely affect all of the world. And that is another Chinese civil war breaking out for like the 1500th time in history. We have Tibet, we have Xinjiang, and then we have a pro-Taiwanese / Republic rebellion down south near Hong Kong and Macau. So a lot of the world starts to pick its favorite sides, such as India siding with Tibet. Some of these Central Asian countries come to the support of Xinjiang. And then we have a lot of Western democracies, such as the United States and Europe, coming to the aid of the Republic of China rebellion. For now, no foreign interference occurs, but we do have these rebellions getting ground. The Tibetan rebellion moves northwards and connects up with the Xinjiang rebellion, and from here the two rebellions decide to split all of Western China. A mutual defense pact is set up between these two alliances, with each having their own goals of taking out China, and each of them starts to get supplied by their neighbors. As for the Republic of China rebellion, they are having a little bit of difficulty expanding, as China has a lot of troops in these southern areas, but overall they do show some progress. So yeah, that's going to be the Chinese Civil War, which we'll probably be spanning over this video and the next one. Let's go ahead and take a look at another event in the world. And this time we actually have a war breaking out over here in Africa between Egypt and Ethiopia. In real life, Egypt and Ethiopia hold pretty sour relations due to the fact that Ethiopia wants to dam the Nile, which would hurt Egypt since they really heavily rely on the Nile. Another country that also relies on the Nile is Sudan. So together, these two countries come together and aim to take out Ethiopia. In defense of Ethiopia, we have South Sudan joining the war on their side. Now this is interesting because South Sudan is not a very stable country at all. So this overall unites a ginormous war throughout East Africa, as South Sudan is in an alliance with the East African Federation, and they actually get their allies to join in on this war. Now this is an attack one, attack all alliance, and South Sudan did willingly join the war. However, they don't really care because they see Sudan and Egypt as a threat, so they join anyway. So now with East Africa involved, we have even more countries joining in, as Somalia joins in on the side of the red team, as well as Eritrea. Upon Somalia's joining, we have Somaliland joining the side of the blue team, and from here things get ugly. Right away, Ethiopian forces push up and capture the coastline of Eritrea, while Sudanese forces push down into South Sudan. Kenya and Ethiopia push into an already collapsing Somalia and manage to take over the entire country, which knocks out a huge front for them. From here, they start to focus up north as Sudan pursues its push down into South Sudan. Egyptian and Sudanese forces now cross the Ethiopian border and start to invade the country, while Ethiopia manages to almost finish off all of Eritrea. Sudan manages to cut South Sudan almost in half, which from here they expand upon the spearhead, which all in all makes South Sudan collapse. From here, Sudanese forces cross over into Ethiopia, but have a hard time invading the country due to its geography. In northern Eritrea, we have Ethiopian troops being pushed back, and eventually these troops re-enter into Ethiopia. Forces from East Africa now push back over into South Sudan and retake some of its land, but overall we have a lot of these troops arriving in Ethiopia in order to push back the Sudanese over here in western Ethiopia. This Great Line is greatly pushed back until they eventually meet the border of Sudan, and from here they start to focus on recapturing parts of southern Sudan. Now at this point, Egypt is sending all of the forces, and they are finally arriving at the border, which is a huge turning point for them. Egyptian forces push across the coast and capture all of Eritrea's coast back, and now start a new front into Ethiopia. The northern invasion goes as well as they push down over and around Djibouti, while Sudanese forces over in South Sudan recuperate and start to recapture parts of the country. Now we have one large front against East Africa, and now the red team starts to push down towards the capital of Ethiopia. Forces have a hard time pushing in, but eventually they do break through and capture the city, which is a big blow to Ethiopia. Sudanese forces resume capturing all of South Sudan as they do so successfully and now push down into Uganda. However, over on the border of the DRC, we have troops from the Congo pushing back and into South Sudan. So overall, this war is going fairly well for the red team as they are, slowly advancing down into East Africa. The only problem they're facing is the geography of Ethiopia is kind of hard to invade. You can just ask Italy that. But in terms of realism, we wouldn't have Egypt and Sudan invading all the way down to Tanzania. That's just implausible, too far, and supply lines would most certainly be cut. So now they only start to focus on holding back the DRC and invading Ethiopia. So forces near Djibouti now push down and into center Ethiopia. From here, an encirclement is complete in the center of the country, and this area is captured. DRC forces continue to push into Sudanese forces until eventually they are stopped in a stalemate along the entire front line. Back over in Ethiopia, forces that were in South Sudan now pushed out and encircle another part of Ethiopia's army, and that falls pretty quickly. Now at this point, we have South Sudan tempting the rest of their allies to accept defeat in order for them not to get annexed, and this is kind of seen as a sacrifice, as South Sudan would most likely be annexed by Sudan in this peace treaty. So South Sudan surrenders, and we have the East African Federation leaving the war. From here, all that is left is Ethiopia, who sees this and basically says, wow. Ethiopia opts to surrender in order to hopefully not get all the way annexed, and let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. Alright, so looking at this peace treaty here, we have a lot to take in as Sudan annexes all of South Sudan, but also takes control of a large chunk of western Ethiopia. Eritrea is expanded down south into Ethiopia, and their main goal here is just to take away as much as the Blue Nile away from Ethiopia as possible. A large portion of that lays over here in this area and then flows up into Sudan and out into Egypt and blah blah blah. So they kind of wanted to take that away from Ethiopia as much as they could, and they did just that. Now Egypt didn't get any land out of this because that would look horrible on a map. So we actually have Egypt and Sudan signing an offensive pact together, which basically says that we can use your territory to kind of monitor the Nile situation, but also guarantees the defense of the two nations together. So we have these nations relations being repaired from this. Down south, however, Ethiopia takes a huge blow as they lose a lot of their western lands. But on the other hand, we have Somalia releasing Somaliland officially, and Somaliland itself gaining recognition from the world. So it is now an official country. So now from this, we have East Africa being left pretty weak as a member of their alliance was kind of lost due to Sudan annexing them. So in order to recuperate and expand, we actually have Ethiopia opting to join this alliance in order for defense against a hostile Egypt. So now essentially we have the East African Federation trading South Sudan for Ethiopia, which probably is an upgrade. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look elsewhere in the world, where in Europe we have an interesting scenario playing out in the Balkans. Now, as I said in the first video, we have NATO itself, and then we have NATO partners, which aren't officially members, but they are protected by NATO. These NATO partners include Ireland, Austria, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and then finally Azerbaijan. Now we actually have an application process going through here. NATO in real life has been, beefing up itself, and honestly, it's becoming a lot stronger than it was previously. Now, since these events have technically already taken place in this timeline, we actually have Ireland and Austria applying for full NATO membership, in which they are granted. In real life as well, we actually have Sweden and Finland who have been invited to join the alliance officially, as Turkey has lifted their veto on them joining. So these guys are now officially going to be NATO members within the following months. Now Bosnia and Herzegovina, and then of course Azerbaijan, they are left as NATO partners, as they don't really meet the requirements to join. Bosnia and Herzegovina has a lot of internal problems, and then Azerbaijan just simply doesn't really want to become a NATO member. So for now, these two refrain until something else happens, which is Serbia kind of invading Kosovo. Now, there is no real problem with this other than the fact that Albania and Kosovo are close friends. From this war breaking out, we actually have Bosnia and Herzegovina kind of breaking out until a civil war. Now in this actual timeline, this probably would have happened years ago, as this is like an upcoming event in real life. But the Serbian population of Bosnia and Herzegovina rises up in favor of Serbia, and this kind of activates NATO a little bit. Bosnia and Herzegovina is a NATO partner, so NATO comes to the assistance of Bosnia and Herzegovina in its own civil war. However, Serbian troops then enter into Bosnia and Herzegovina, which activates NATO as a whole. So now we have this kind of being a thing. Now, some countries in NATO do object to this, such as Greece and Romania, but they don't really have an option, as they are kind of obligated to invoke Article 5. So yeah, Serbia here. Alrighty then. Now, Russia decides that this is really stupid, but they don't get involved because that would mean World War III, and Russia isn't ready for that yet. So now let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. Looking at this peace treaty, Kosovo is now fully independent, and we actually have recognition from Romania, Greece, and Spain, which leads to them actually joining NATO. From here, a new government is installed in Serbia, who actually ends up joining NATO. And at this very point in time, every country in Europe is aligned to a faction other than Switzerland. Now let's go ahead and head back over to China, where we have a huge betrayal happening. We have Russia sending troops over into Manchuria. Now Russia is at this point a total dictatorship and an authoritarian country. The leader, who is very close to Putin, who is probably definitely already passed, is they really want to reform the Soviet Union in a way, and they see China as a perfect opportunity just to do so. Now, China's government is baffled by this because Russia was really all they had left, but now they're facing an invasion of Russians from the north. Now, this wouldn't really be a problem other than the fact that NATO and the PDO are trying to contain Russia, so seeing them expand into northern China makes them want to get involved, and get involved is exactly what they do. Together, NATO and PDO carry out a joint operation which lands over here in eastern China, and from here they push down and meet up with the Republic of China forces in which they are allied to. From here, these guys push around the coast and capture major Chinese cities, which hurts the already crippled Chinese economy. In the south, communist forces do manage to push back the Republic, but overall, with the backed Western help, we have them holding out. Over in Xinjiang, we actually have volunteers from the Middle East arriving to help out the rebellion, while Indian volunteers arrive in Tibet to push back the Chinese forces. Around the same time, we also have Indian forces crossing over into China, and they're pretty much doing the same thing as Russia's doing, except this time they're trying to establish their claims as theirs. Pakistan doesn't do anything about this because, well, that would lead to a large war in this area, and they really don't want that. So Pakistan just kind of chills for now. PDO forces now cross over from the border of Korea and kind of meet up with Russian forces along the border, and we have a very, very long staring contest. Back up north, Russian forces now capture all of the northern Chinese area as they start to head down into mainland China. Now, a real race is about to break out here as the Russians and the Western countries want to capture Beijing before each other. And right now, the Western countries are closer, but Russia is now more focusing on the center area. The Republic of China forces now push back in the south and start to invade up into the mainland. Meanwhile, Western countries beefing up their front line and capture even more of the Chinese coast, now pushing up and capturing this area, which was once owned by Germany. So yeah, China is in a full-on civil war now, and it's a little bit more than a civil war. It's more of a Chinese gangbang, but you know, it's normal stuff in terms of China's history. So while all this fun Civil War stuff is happening over here, we have another Civil War breaking out in the Americas, and it's actually going to be happening over here in Mexico. Now, in this timeline, we're already like 20 years into the future, so I can start to do kind of fictional stuff that maybe won't happen in real life. This is probably one of those things, although the cartel in Mexico is getting pretty bad, so a Civil War would probably eventually break out. Over down in the Yucatan area and over here in Western Mexico, we have a faction breaking out that really just wants to reform the Mexican government and crack down on the internal issues. Their best way of doing this was violence, so that's interesting. But seeing as America is kind of turning into an imperialist, well, I guess even more of an imperialist country in this scenario, we have them having to get involved since, you know, it's kind of free land. So a force of American peacekeeping forces enter into the Baja area, as well as down over here near Texas. The US government claims that they are entering the country in order to stabilize it, but a lot of countries don't buy that and just see the US trying to expand their borders. One thing we do see though is the United States and this rebel group making a kind of like a don't invade each other yet group. And yeah, together these guys start to invade and take down Mexico. Down south in the Yucatan area, we have the Red Team forces gathering up and capturing the entire area. However, the Mexican army is mobilized and is now pushing them back. Same thing happens over here in the west, where the Mexicans push back their rebel groups, while a stalemate is temporarily established on the border with the United States. And yeah, that's actually going to do it for today's alternative future video. Now, just to recap real quick, a little bit of action took place in East Africa with Egypt and Sudan versus Ethiopia and the East African Federation. We then saw a civil war break out in China where, well, it's just crazy. But then over in Europe, we had Serbia invading Kosovo, which turned into this. Not too good for Serbia. And finally, now we have a Mexican civil war erupting. So yeah, overall, a lot of things have happened in this video. And once again, like I said, it is leading up into a lot of tension between the Western countries and the Russian aligned countries. Once again, if you guys want to see this series continue, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe, ring the bell, share it. Commenting really helps as well because I love to read you guys' comments. And yeah, just showing support on this video and any video in general lets me know that you guys like the series or the type of video and that I should continue doing it. Now, I know I've said a lot about the whole showing support thing lately, And that's just because I'm trying to, like, you know, figure out what kind of path I should go down and where I should go from here for mapping. I don't plan to do mapping for the rest of my YouTube career, and I do want to change it into something else eventually. Definitely something that is still on topic with the whole history thing, but maybe not just this every day all the time, because it does get repetitive for me, and I'm sure it's getting repetitive for you guys. But don't think that I'm going to be quitting this anytime soon. This is more of a future outlook thing, maybe next year or like mid next year, sometime in there. It all depends on how my videos do and then what you guys like to see or what you want to see. So there's that. There's a Discord server in the description where we have a lot of things going on. We have a government system set up. We actually have a military now, and a lot of other fun aspects to it have been added. So it's a pretty good time. I enjoy interacting with you guys, and if you want to join it, once again, link in the description, and there might be one in the pinned comment as well. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.